Coach Eetu is going to join us today. This is the slides. I'm going to warm up the recording on the live stream. So we're being recorded now, Dennis.
Oh, very early.
Yeah, that's okay. If people on YouTube or Facebook see us, they will know that we're going to start in about 30 minutes. And our coach is a Ph.D. presenter who lives in Finland, who has led people to the highest echelons of swimming with the Olympic breaststroker. And we're going to share some of the slides from a past presentation. And he coaches junior athletes as well as older athletes. If you want to attend, it's probably better to go to the link on the bottom left here, the wafsu.org, and join us in person. You'll be able to ask your questions there. We had a wonderful Hall of Fame event recently where we got to honor 3 coaches, especially Kate and Ray were present. But let's we're going to play some information for you until our seminar begins in about 30 minutes.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Oops.
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon for those who are coming from different places around the world. Okay, this is your chairman of the UCSSC welcoming you in the 2026, and we are thankful for the consistent attendees. We would like to persuade most of the coaches to upgrade themselves for the latest of coaching knowledge that you can get coming from the UCSSC. The speakers coming from different countries, most of them are actually national coaches. We would like to ask you to at least spend about 1 hour to attend the UCSSC Sports Coaching Education. Thank you.
We started with a whistle and a waterproof pen. Talked about coaching and what it means to men. From lap lanes to leadership roles, it's more than splits, it's shaping souls. Heavy or not, we swam through it all. Tech teamwork, healing after the fall. With water's wisdom, coaches stand tall. Heavy or not, we surf life's call. When pools were shuttered, the mission got loud. Equity, safety, we challenged the crowd. Talked about strokes and swimming with grace. and bringing joy back to the training space. Olympic twists and event design. We questioned progress and drew the line. How much yardage is too much pain? Let's train for health and long-term gain. Mental reps and taper plans. We cheer the tryhards and quiet fans. Hyperbaric dreams and rescue gear. Kept it real but kept it clear. From honeybees to IL games, to lost facilities and shifting lanes. Tech tools, balance, burnout fears. The OG swim guide through 50 years. Heavy or not, we stayed in the lane. Shared the stories, shared the pain. From pool deck chatter to tech and rain. Heavy or not, we coach again.
I see some people are coming to the room. We're just warming up the live stream, folks. The presentation will start in about 25 minutes. We had a prior presentation from Eetu. He talked about going from age group to elite swimming. He'll be presenting today. He has a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science.
Guys, we will be starting in about 28 minutes. So you want to eat, you can eat now, okay? Check-in time is actually 8:15, but you're going to be starting at about 8:30, 28 minutes from our speaker from Finland, and he will be here in before 28 minutes. So for those who are inside already, you can eat while you're waiting. Okay? Thank you.
These are some of the slides from past presentations from Eetu. The past presentations are online now at wafsu.org.
The first seminar is actually motivation seminar from Eetu. Okay, so it is actually composed of about 60% swimmers and 40% parents.
Here's a 9-minute video about safe sport. Welcome to Heavy or Not, episode number 87. It's a report about safe sport in the USA from a number of different coaches. The numbers are startling.
diving deep into a massive survey that gives us a real look into the state of coaching. We're going to explore the highs, the lows, and what it all tells us about the future of sports. Because this survey of over 3,400 coaches immediately hits you with this huge paradox. It's this wild mix of absolute love for the job and just total crushing burnout. So first, let's talk about the good stuff. And it's really good. A whopping 91.9% of coaches, that's more than 9 out of 10, say that coaching has had a positive impact on their lives. They really genuinely love what they do. But then, at the very same time, almost 85% of them say they felt burned out by their job in just the last 5 years. Loving something that is also completely exhausting you. So what gives? How can both of these things be true? This tells us it's not just about the long hours. There's something deeper happening in the culture of coaching that we really need to get to the bottom of. To start to unpack this, we've got to look at how coaches feel about the safety culture in their own organizations. Are they being set up to succeed, or are they being put in impossible situations? Coaches believe their organizations prioritize their athletes' well-being over winning, that's the first bar, but when you ask about their own well-being, oof, that number drops way down. The message feels pretty clear. Take care of the players, but the coaches, they're on their own. And here's another huge disconnect. Check this out. Almost every coach, nearly 96%, is confident they know exactly what to do if an athlete is harmed. But regular, proactive conversations about preventing harm in the first place, only about a half of them are having those. It seems like the system is set up to be reactive, not proactive. This kind of environment puts coaches in a really difficult position. They're not just mentors. They are also witnesses to some pretty troubling stuff. And way too often, they end up becoming targets themselves. Almost half of all coaches have seen another coach scream at an athlete in a way that was actually frightening. And about a third have seen coaches call an athlete an insulting name or swear at them for a mistake. That's a tough environment to work in day after day. And it's not just about what they witness, it's what happens to them directly. Nearly half have been verbally harassed. And where does most of that harassment come from? Well, mostly from parents, and, pretty sadly, from other coaches. So you have to ask, is everyone having the same rough experience? The data is crystal clear on this one. Absolutely not. This burden is not being shared equally at all. In fact, when you start to break down the numbers by gender, by race, and by disability, you start to see these really troubling gaps. A very different and often much harder reality emerges for certain groups. Let's start with gender. Female coaches are feeling burned out and thinking about quitting at way higher rates than men. And that's not just a number on a page. That's a real loss of talent and perspective from the world of coaching. And the gap gets even wider for coaches with disabilities. They are nearly 3 times more likely to fear that an athlete would actually be punished for reporting abuse. That speaks volumes about their faith in the system to do the right thing. Look at this breakdown by race. For white coaches, only a very small percentage fear retaliation. But for Asian and Black coaches, that number skyrockets to almost 1 in 4. It's so clear that the trust in a fair and just system just isn't there for everyone. Now, for all these tough stats, this is not a story without some hope. Because the coaches themselves, the ones right there in the thick of it, they have a playbook for how to make things better. So what do they say needs to change? Their answers are pretty straightforward. Number 1, better leadership and accountability from the top down. Number 2, and this is a huge one, they need real support in dealing with parent behavior. And number 3, more access to training and educational resources. Let's just double-click on that second point because it's so important. The issue with parents came up over and over and over again in this survey. It was a top reason for burnout, a top reason for quitting, a top challenge to creating a safe environment. It's a massive theme. And this one quote from a coach in the survey, wow, it just says it all.
Parents and guardians, they created tension, they instilled distrust, and they were worse than children.
It's a pretty stark reminder that building a healthy sports culture isn't just on the coaches. It's on everyone. It's on the organizations, the fans, the parents. Which really leaves us with a big question to chew on. In this whole ecosystem, what role are we playing?
You'll be able to get the full report, a PDF, in the show notes. It's part of a course that the International Swim Coaches is providing, along with Barry Healy of BC Canada, called CYA. It's at read.swimiska.org. So the U.S. Center on Safe Sport released a National Coaches Survey report, and this covered a lot of swim coaches, but there were coaches from many other disciplines as well. But the general coaching experiences have positive impact, there's burnout and retention issues, and reasons for leaving the sport. Of course, coaches have high life satisfaction and long-term involvement plans. But the burnout and retention one is what always captures our attention, that 84.6% felt burned out. 64.8% consider quitting, and there's higher rates of burnout and retention among female coaches. And the reasons for leaving, number one is retirement and aging. And I think we got to do a lot more to engage our retired population of coaches. Another reason for lack of organizational support, family needs, and challenges with parents are high on the list as well. Welcome to Heavy or Not, episode number 87. It's a report about safe sport in the USA from a number of different coaches. The numbers are Somebody
Hanging.
Did stop on us.
Yeah, it's just stopped.
Okay. Let's I have another one that's just this is 9 minutes. Let's hide this. It's good to see everybody here. We're just warming up the live stream. We'll start in about 15 minutes. Thanks for being here. There was a piece on culture, team culture, I wanted to. This is 6 minutes long.
Today, we're pulling back the curtain on what it takes to build a winning team culture. We're going to do this by diving into the playbook of an elite international coach, Harkai Hunor. And look, this isn't just about X's and O's. It's about building the very foundation of success for any team in any sport. So let's just start with this idea because it really flips everything you think you know on its head. This idea that chasing results and only results can actually poison the well. It can kill the very development that leads to sustainable success. A real winning culture, it's built on growth, not just the final score. So here's our game plan. We're going to break down 5 key areas. We'll start with the foundation on the court. Then we'll look at why winning off the court matters so much. After that, it's all about the player, the art of adapting on the fly, and we'll wrap up with the biggest rule of all. The coach has to be the #1 example. Okay, everything, and I mean everything, starts right here. On the court, in the pool, out on the field. You see, a strong culture isn't built on some rah-rah motivational speech. It's forged in the fire of daily discipline and really clear principles that everyone understands. Think of this right here as the architectural blueprint for your team. These 7 pillars, they're the non-negotiables. From showing up every single day to leading by example, each one is like a load-bearing wall. You pull one out, and the whole thing can come crashing down. Let's break that down a bit. First up, and this is the big one. Consistency. If your athletes aren't there, you can't build a thing. Simple as that. Your rules and expectations, they have to be crystal clear from day one, not made up as you go. And yeah, you demand maximum effort, but you also have to be smart enough to know that you can't talk to every single athlete the exact same way. And this quote, this just nails the principle of fairness. Look, your credibility as a coach is built on what you do in practice. You just can't scream at a player to do something in the heat of a game that you haven't taught them, drilled them on, and prepared them for. It's not fair. It destroys trust. Now, especially in today's world, the final whistle doesn't mean the work is done. Not even close. If you want to build a team that's truly connected and resilient, you have to win the game off the court too. Honestly, this has become just as important as drawing up the right play. A modern coach's job description has gotten a lot bigger. You're not just a coach, you're kind of a community manager. That means you're organizing team building events, you're using social media to praise your players, and you're consciously building an atmosphere where your athletes can actually connect as human beings. You know, Coach Hunter has this perfect story that shows you exactly what this means. He realized that one of his teams wasn't super self-motivated, so he knew he had to build that motivation by creating bonds, by creating shared memories. And that led to a pretty unforgettable day on a river. So, the coach's boat, paddling in perfect rhythm, just glides to an easy win. Meanwhile, the other boats are pure chaos. People are splashing, they're spinning in circles, boats are flipping over. The lesson about teamwork was pretty obvious, right? But the real magic was the shared laughter. That's the glue that turned them into a real team. And that brings us right back to the individual player. Because a team culture, no matter how great, only works if every single person on that team feels like they're getting better. Your job as a coach is to develop the person, and that takes a serious understanding of psychology. Okay, so think about it. When you take over a new team, you can't just walk in and demand blind trust. It doesn't work that way. The strategy is to go for quick, short-term wins. Show a player you can make them just a little bit better fast. That earns you their trust. And that trust, that's the currency you spend to invest in their long-term development. So here's a classic coaching nightmare. It's the playoffs, you're the underdog, you just lost game 1 at home, and your team is convinced they can't win. They're defeated. What do? Well, this is where the coach becomes a psychologist. So the coach came up with this brilliant plan. He had the team buy the most expensive, fancy protein powder on the market. Then he created this super professional, elaborate ritual around it. When to take it, how much to take. He made it feel like they had a secret weapon, a scientific edge nobody else had. Look, the protein itself did absolutely nothing in 3 days. But the belief did everything. The players felt like the team was investing in them, they felt like they had an advantage, and they walked into that next game with a totally different energy. They won. The trick worked. You can have the most brilliant system in the world, but if you try to force it rigidly on every team in every situation, it's going to fail. The absolute best coaches are chameleons. They can adapt their philosophy, their communication, everything to fit the world around them. And this adaptation happens on so many different levels. First, you have to adapt to the players you actually have, not the ones you wish you had. Then you adapt to the league, to the other coaches, and maybe the trickiest one of all, you have to adapt to the local culture you're working in. When you show up in a new town, you need to scout the city just like you'd scout an opponent. Learn its history. Understand how people there think. And trust me, if you make an effort to learn even just a few words of the local language, the amount of respect you gain is massive. It shows you actually care. And that brings us to the final, and without a doubt, the most important piece of this whole playbook. A coach doesn't just install a culture. The coach is the culture. Every single thing you do is being watched, and it sets the standard for everyone else. You see this mistake all the time, especially with young coaches. They try to be friends with their players. But here's the thing. Being liked and being respected are not the same thing. Players might hang out with a friend, but they will follow a leader into a war. And it's respect that builds a leader's authority. And believe me, your players notice everything. How you dress, how you talk about your family, what you read. Coach Hunter talks about playing a lot of chess. When his players see that, it reinforces the idea that he's a strategist, a thinker. Your entire life is the lesson plan. Because at the end of the day, all your technical knowledge will only get you so far. Real influence is built on character. Your athletes have to see that you have integrity, that you have discipline. That's what earns real, lasting respect. So it all really boils down to this one last question. Are you building players or are you just building plays? Because focusing on plays, yeah, that might win you a couple of games. But focusing on building better people, better leaders, and better teammates, that's how you create a culture of excellence that lasts a lifetime.
Good to see everybody. We're going to start in about 10 minutes. This is
Coach
live
Nilo, are you
streaming.
there? Coach Nilo, are you there? Okay, guys, when we start, we would like to request if we can open your windows, okay? When we start, I would like to request all open windows. Most of these are swimmers and parents. This is a motivation seminar coming from a national coach of Finland, which is actually doing a 26 on a 50 breast.
Here's another short video. It's on shallow water blackout.
Hi, I'm Michael Phelps, and as you know, I love to swim. Swimming is a life-saving skill, but it's important to be careful around water, even if you're a great swimmer. Never swim alone and never hold your breath for an extended amount of time. Doing so can cause you to faint. It's what happened to my friend Chandler.
I was actually pronounced dead in shallow water after taking an underwater swim challenge in a pool. Vacationing with my family, it was my competitive self that hyperventilated so I could hold my breath more easily.
But Chandler never emerged from underwater. When they finally realized something was very wrong, he was already gone. If not for the two doctors who happened to be by the pool, he would be.
Those doctors never stopped CPR, and after 5 minutes, they got a heartbeat and a pulse. My family and wife had to experience this horror for no good reason. Most shallow water blackout victims don't make it. Me being here is a miracle.
Shallow water blackout is 94% lethal and 100% preventable. So please don't hold your breath for extended amounts of time.
If it happened to me, it could happen to anyone.
Coach, loud, speaking loud. Coach.
You're off the microphone. I don't hear you too well. We're going to start in a little more than 10 minutes or 5 minutes. We're just warming up the live stream, sending some things out. So you can watch us on the meeting. But if the technology's working well, there is a live stream link. I'm going to put a note in the chat, and we can fire up the chat as well. We have today's poster with Dr. Eetu, and the live stream link is now on this page. So if you go to wafsu.org/April-24, you'll see the countdown timer. And there's also a link to this meeting as well as the live stream. We used to have clocks from different times around the world, but that plugin broke. There was a vulnerability to it. So I've taken that off the main page. But there's always, or I try to have a countdown timer, how many days or hours or minutes to our next meeting. This is one of the rare meetings that happens on a Friday. Most of the time, they're on a Saturday. But the presenter
Coach,
and
buksan mo yung email mo, then doon mo buksan. Doon mo ilagay mo yung link, tapos doon mo buksan. Okay? Doon mo na lang pindutin. Okay? Thank you. Coach Nilo doesn't know how to get in to the meet-in. Okay, let's see. Okay. Is Coach there already? Okay. Maybe
I just got his slides.
Okay. He has slides on both. So better prioritize the slides for the motivation for swimmers. Motivation for swimmers. Okay, I'll try to call him back again. We'll start in a few minutes. Coach, you can check in already. Oh, he's in. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon from different parts of the world. Okay, we are now on our Friday session of the UCSSC, and we would like to welcome you with my co-host coming from USA, Coach Mark Rauterkus, a water polo coach, and with us now is actually a national coach, a doctor in sports, okay, a national coach of Finland, who is formerly doing a short course time of a 50-meter breaststroke at 26.9. Okay, regularly at 27 on a long course. Okay, and wow, this guy is actually a powerhouse on the body itself. Okay, if you just look at his body, really a strong person. Okay, now we would like to give the floor for our consistent volunteer speaker coming from Finland, Dr. Eetu Karvonen. Coach, the floor is yours.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Sound good.
Yes.
Swimmers, please open
Yes.
your windows, swimmers. Parents and swimmers, please open your windows. Okay? In respect to our speaker for today. Okay? I just requested this one yesterday. So thank you so much, Coach. Okay.
No, no,
The floor is yours, Coach.
thank you, Mark. I gotta ask, did you get my slides?
I
Can
did.
Can I find
So-
them somewhere again?
They were all in one
Yes,
file. And there was the first one, right?
yes.
Okay. Yeah. So if you go to the widgets,
Can you guys see it now?
yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. So this first hour or 50 minutes or however I end up talking is about me. And of course, this is the hardest topic for a Finnish guy because we don't really like to discuss about ourselves and our accomplishments. But at the moment, I'm of course a coach, and I've been professionally coaching for the past more than 10 years now, like 12 years already, and as a kind of a hobby, semi-professionally 10 years prior to that. But at the same time as I was already coaching, I was also a swimmer, and I used to look like that. I hope I would still be looking as powerful as I was, and my best stroke was breaststroke. And when Dennis asked me to discuss about this, I thought, okay, how should I approach it? And I think it would be the best to kind of go through my whole career, as I understand that there are some swimmers and maybe some parents listening, to kind of see what the development and the path to at least to an international level swimming kind of looks like. I was not a Michael Phelps. I was not Leon Marchand. I never got any international medals, but I did swim at European champ final in short course, and also World Championship semi-final on long course, and in few relays in finals as part of the Finnish team, at least on European level. I don't really remember because it already about 20 years ago when I started to swim at the international scene. But of course, everybody has a start, and I'm probably aging myself here, but I started swimming in the 80s. So 1989, my dad's colleagues or work colleagues' daughter was a swimming coach or kind of a learn to swim swimming teacher, and they asked whether I wanted to learn how to swim. So I actually started to swim in a club at age 3. So I am 40 years old now, and I started like a structure training at age 3, which is of course very, very young, not very typical in Finland. But apparently I was so excited about it that I already competed in 50 freestyle in 1990. So I remember this is my first competition, and even then I had a massive trust in myself because my mother always tells me that right after that meet I only talked about this competition and how I won it. And of course I was dead last because there was nobody else who was as young as I was. But luckily, or perhaps unluckily, depending on which point of view you take, but this was the golden age of Finnish swimming. So I'm from Finland, and we have two basically massive swimmers from the 90s, Antti Kasvio, who got an Olympic bronze medal in 200 freestyle in 1992. And at the same competition, another swimmer, Jani Sievinen, was 4th in 200 IM. And right at that point, when I was about 6, 7, 8 years old, they were bringing some hardware from every competition, from European champs, from world championships, from Olympics. And then in 1994, Jani beat the world record in 200 IM. And he actually held it for, I believe, for 9 years until Michael Phelps was the first one to actually break it. And of course, in Finnish swimming, this was completely unprecedented. There was no elite swimming before Jani and Antti, and really never since. So this was the boom of Finnish swimming, and really it was these competitions that kind of set my life path, because at age 8, it was clear to me what I was going to be. I never became the best in the world, but I do remember that at that age, I made the decision that I want to be the same as Jani and Antti was. And the great thing, and again, it's dependable on from which country you are, but these guys, I could see them every month. So there's, of course, competitions going on every month in Finland. And if you chose the competition correctly, you could actually swim against Jani, you could swim against Antti, these like super swimmers, and you kind of identified into what they were. And at the time, maybe from like, unfortunately, the training paradigm in Finland and for the next 20 years, and I think this will be quite clearly one of the reasons why I didn't quite get where I wanted before I actually came to the US and trained, was that they trained extremely hard and a lot. So the paradigm of swimming, I remember growing up, was just that more was better. And when I was really, really young, I remember swimming 10 kilometers during Christmas time and during New Year's, and every holidays were basically just about swimming. But again, this kind of approach to swimming at such a young age also insisted on me the value of hard work. Maybe the work wasn't really smart, but at the same time, nothing really came easy. And since you had these stories in Finland at the time of Jani and Antti and how much they trained and how hard they were working towards it and how they put their whole life into it, we had a whole generation of boys and girls just like me who kind of jumped into that same type of programming. And I think it won't happen again probably in Finland. So of course these were generational talents. But since we have the internet now, like one of the first things that I usually try to insist on my swimmers that I coach, who are age groupers and juniors mostly, is that since we have YouTube, we have Instagram, we have all of this social media, that we can actually relate and identify ourselves into the great swimmers all around the world. So I was lucky at that time that we had these two great swimmers. If you're not so lucky that you have great swimmers in your country, it really doesn't matter, because you can open up the YouTube and watch the newest Caleb Dressel video on how to dolphin kick and stuff like that, which of course at the time it was not available. We had to go to the actual competition and see how Antti was swimming freestyle and then try to copy that as much as we could actually remember. I was fairly talented, at least from like a Finnish perspective. Of course, the level of swimming, other than these two great swimmers, was not really great. But of course, since I was all in swimming, I was extremely dominant in Finnish age group swimming. So I won not every event, but almost every event at age group nationals, from like age 11 all the way to age 14. However, looking back into it, it was quite clear why I won. It probably wasn't really the training and the hard work mentality. It was the fact that I grew up really, really fast. So I was about this tall as I'm right now at age 14 when I was in the year 2000. So that was kind of like my peak height came really, really early. And after the year like 2000, 2001, it was much, much harder. And then this early success also kind of trickled down to even like open competitions. So in 2001, when I was 15, I got my first medals from the adult Finnish nationals. So I got a silver medal in 200 breaststroke, long course. I think I swam 2:26. And everybody who knows about swimming, that's not really a fast time, because girls and women swim 2:19 nowadays. But at the time in Finland, you could get a silver with that. And I swam 1:08 for 100 breaststroke. And I got a bronze. And I think this was kind of my peak with this normal kind of approach into swimming that we had in Finland at the time, because nobody talked about technique. Nobody talked about rest and recovery, nutrition, anything like that. It was just all about who can swim the most, and this will make you the best you can be. And from 2001, I actually got my first plateau. And I think the plateau, again, is just a natural part of your growth stopping. And this came really, really early for me. And I did not improve pretty much at all in the next, I would say, 3 years. And the real reason for that was that in 2001, when I got those medals, of course, me and my coach at the time started thinking about, I can actually be really, really good. And we probably doubled my training. So at age 15, I was already training like 9 times a week. And then once I started hitting 16, I started training 12 times a week of swimming plus all the dry land. And after about 4 months of doing that stuff, both of my shoulders became really, really painful. And then I got them MRI'd, and they could see that I pretty much had swam my shoulders out from my body. So they were just hanging on a thread. And I had my first shoulder surgery in 2003. So I was age 17 at the time. And then another one, which I then had to have. And I already knew that in age 18 in 2004. However, one of the things that I realized during the time that I was waiting to get these surgeries was that my only improvement in swimming, and I am not really complaining here, it will all come as a kind of a lesson in the later years, came when I could not train. So we were training extremely hard, 90 kilometers per week, and all of this stuff that was done in the early 2000s. And then I hurt my shoulder and I couldn't swim for about like 6 or 8 weeks, only do kicking. And that was the only improvement I made from 2001 all the way up to 2005. Of course, I couldn't compete when I had my shoulder surgeries. But I remember this, that I dropped like 3 seconds after not training. And this was like the first glimpse of the future, how I actually should train, and also my like coaching understanding, also for age groupers, that it's good to work really, really hard and you're building that capacity. But at some point in your career, you also have to kind of utilize what you already built. And that requires a bit of different type of training. And when I was, of course, recovering from my shoulder surgeries, I became probably one of the best breaststroke kickers in the world. And I think this was very, very useful. But unfortunately, since this was the early 2000s, I did get a knee injury, which is still kind of part of my life every day. So one of the lessons there is that there is such a thing, that recovery that you do need. And I tended to, throughout my career, the problem was always doing too much. And really, even the lesson of screwing up my shoulders really didn't teach me that I can't recover from all the training in the world, and unfortunately did not teach my coaches at the time either. And I would say the first kind of smart training approach that came to Finland was actually brought here by these guys called Milt Nelms and Bill Boomer in 2005. And I remember my coach actually attending this clinic. And after this clinic, our training kind of changed almost completely. So before that, we did not talk about technique at all here in Finland. It was all about hard training. But then Milt and Bill really kind of brought in this technical approach to training. So we were still training a lot. I don't think the physiological training, the fitness training changed much, but we started to actually film our technique and doing different kind of drills and approaching it from a little bit different point of view, which really came at a good time. And this goes back to these ideas that over the years, as you're training and going through your career, something needs to change so you can push your improvement forward. Because after my shoulder surgeries and then having this knee injury, it was quite clear that I could not approach swimming the same way as I did as a teenager, because I just couldn't do it because of my injuries. And then when Milt and Bill kind of brought this new kind of thinking in the Finnish swimming, I started improving again. And I would say that when I was about 20 years old, so 2006, this was the best swimming year of my life. So on short course, I improved more than 2 seconds. So I went first time under 1 minute in short course. And, 20 years ago, this was a quite good time, to 59.2, and then 200 to 210. And I had kind of similar improvements in long course. Not as great improvements, but still quite solid. And this was also the first year that I started to qualify for international competitions. So 2005, I went to my first short course Europeans, and then 2006 long course Europeans. And then I pretty much went to those competitions every year since then. Never made, unfortunately, Olympics as a swimmer, 3 times as a coach already, but never as a swimmer. I was just always like couple tenths off from the qualifications at the time in 2008 and 2012. However, once I did get these initial improvements in 2005 and 2006, there was really no improvement in the next 3 years that followed. So again, it was kind of the same pattern for me. We found a way to train, and I did get good improvements for 2 years. But after that 2 years, I was already an adult. I could not get any more improvements. So I pretty much stagnated at the same level. And actually, for the 100 breaststroke time, it took me 6 years to improve that again. Of course, again, in 2009, we had the jacket suits, and that's where I swam my all-time fastest in 50 breaststroke. Unfortunately, it's with the suit. And this again came after really, really non-traditional training, which I should have at the time understood that I was a sprinter. So we were still training. Well, looking back at it, we were training towards like a 400 breaststroke, but we were training towards 200 breaststroke, and we didn't really think about the 50 because, again, 20 years ago, it wasn't that kind of an event, especially here in Europe. But I do remember trying to qualify for the World Championships in 2009, and I had the suit, I had everything, and we tapered for like 2 competitions. I could not break the qualification time, and after the last taper, I got some kind of a flu, and I didn't swim for 3 weeks. And again, still using the same suit, I went to a competition and improved more than a second in my 50 because of all of this rest that I actually got through tapering and then not swimming. Again, kind of pointing me into that direction that, man, you should be a sprinter. But at the time, the culture was such that sprinters really didn't exist in Finland. But that was a great improvement. Well, at 2009, I made the decision, hopefully, to actually move to US. And since I was already 23 years old, I couldn't go to American college, or at least I thought I couldn't, because I did send my resume to Division I colleges, if you know what that means, but the highest level of collegiate swimming in the US, and they all told me that I was too old. So I had to go non-traditional route, and I knew this coach from Portland, Oregon, Alex Nikitin, and I asked whether I could come there and go to the Portland State University. So I actually went to the US and I trained with the club first for a couple of years and went to the college as a traditional student. And this was also very different kind of training that I had used to. And to a very high level, I think Alex is still like the major mentor for me as a coach, because I do prescribe to this kind of really thoughtful progression of training throughout the years, not in the same way as Alex, but unfortunately it was a club, so I was training with kids that were like 7-8 years younger than me, and it was still having this kind of distance training orientation. So I unfortunately did not improve in the first 2 years that I spent with Alex, although I think the training was great. It was just scaled a little bit too much on that endurance side. But I think one of the biggest breakthroughs that I ever did was in the later side of that 2 years. So I tried to qualify again for the World Championships with Alex. I could not do it. We tapered for 2 competitions. In the first competition, I went 221. In the second competition, in 200 breaststroke, I went 218. And then I came back to Finland for summer vacation. And for the first time in my life, I trained on my own. And this goes back to, again, this idea that I trained extremely hard with Alex in Portland. And then I started training on my own. And I did improve my 200 breaststroke by 4 seconds to 2:14.41. And that is my lifetime best. I did that as a 25-year-old swimmer. And at that point, I kind of realized that I could actually coach myself better than anyone. Not because I knew more than Alex or anybody like that, but because I was a quite old swimmer who was still having this passion and a belief that I am a better swimmer than I'm actually showing in competitions. I just have to find a better way to train. And by the luck of draw, then a Division II college, and I didn't even know that this existed at the time, that there's a lower level of collegiate university swimming in the US. And from one of those colleges, from Grand Canyon University, head coach Steve Schaefer, out of the blue, called me and asked me whether I wanted to be part of his team. And this was probably the best next 2 years and actually next 5 years of my life. But I spent there 2 years as a swimmer under him. And one of the first things that Steve told me at the time was that he doesn't really care how I train, and he only cares whether I perform at the competitions. And he knew my story, he knew my background and everything, and how I did this 214 to training alone. And this was kind of the first time in my life where I was allowed to train as a sprinter. And then I immediately started improving. And that's the year where I started to break that 28 barrier every meet. In 2012 and 2013, I improved my 100 breaststroke. I won the Division II college competition in the US, I think 5 times, so 4 times individually, and then we won 1 relay, broke records, finished records, everything like that. And I was already 26 and then 27 years old. So I had to try to find myself and the way to train for 10 years. And of course, nowadays, I think coaches are much more willing to work with the individual to really find their strengths. But at the time in Finland and even in the US, they were not really willing to accept that some people are sprinters. They might need different kind of training, but Coach Steve Schaefer really he allowed me. He didn't force me to swim 200 breaststroke. Of course, I did this in yards, but in long course, I was pretty much done with it. But just dropping that from my program allowed me to really, really excel in these events. And I swam under Steve until 2013, and that's when I graduated with my bachelor's degree and kind of became an assistant, graduate assistant as a coach. I still kind of trained in 2014, and with very little training, I was still able to improve 100 breaststroke short course, and this is the Finnish record, 58:37. Not anymore, because my own swimmer has broken it, but that was like my final swim as a swimmer. So I stopped swimming at age 28 just because of financial situation, and I also went to a graduate program and Ph.D. program after that while I was coaching. But really, the highlights of my swimming career came really, really late. But I think, looking back on it, had I come to Grand Canyon University straight from high school, I probably would have had a very, very different swimming career, because I only found my way of training and my strengths as a swimmer at quite an old age. So that is my story in swimming. Hopefully I didn't bore anybody, but I swam for 25 years or 24 years competitively. And what I could really learn from these 24 years is, again, that fact that you have to find your way, either yourself or with the coach, to actually improve and rely on the strengths that you have, and that the development isn't really linear. So we all want to think that development is that, okay, from year to year to year, you keep improving. But in reality, if you look at my career, I have these periods where the training shifted somehow, where I'm improving really, really fast, but then unfortunately, years and years of grinding the same results year after year, and it all kind of boils down to not changing stuff. So I think one of the things that maybe everybody can learn from this lecture, not really the swimmers, but if there's any coaches listening, is that as the swimmers are aging and their body is changing, something needs to change. If you keep doing the same stuff, then most likely you will plateau, especially after you start or stop growing. And I just quickly try to kind of think about what I really learned within my swimming career. And please don't do it like I did. Like I still I don't resent my swimming career, but I always think that I could have probably been better under some different hands. But I don't blame my coaches, because in Finland at the time it was uh, the the prevailing culture was all about distance swimming, and I was not really suited for that. But the mistakes that I really made was that once I got that initial kind of taste of success at adult level at age 14, 15, I thought that if I just trained twice more without anything else changing in my life in terms of recovery or nutrition or the approach that I take, I will get to the top. And unfortunately, that is not the way it goes, because there is no way to expedite progress. If you're training 5 times a week as a 13-year-old, it's not like if you double that and start training 10 times a week when you're 14, that you will improve at double the rate. Maybe initially, but at some point you will pay it, either as an injury or overtraining, or just kind of improving and using all your resources too fast. So what I would like to do, and what I do as a coach, is always this smooth progression throughout the age group and junior years, and thinking in terms of 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Because for a lot of swimmers, it might seem like a hill that you will never be able to actually walk up to. So let's say you're a 13-year-old 100 freestyler and you're swimming in a minute right now, and to be successful at an international level, you need to go 47. And it might seem that there's no way to do that, but there is. But there's no way to do that in 1 year. And it doesn't matter what you do, you can't do it in 1 year. But we underestimate what you can do in 5 years or 10 years. Really, the secret of swimming success is just that you need to keep progressing from 1 year to another. And if you're not progressing, you have to think, again, the coaches have to think, the swimmers have to think, okay, what needs to change that you still keep progressing? Because, of course, the progression will never be linear, but that should be the goal. And age group swimming, again, from my perspective, I was really, really successful as a youngster, but this was only because of my really, really fast maturity. So again, at age 14, I was the size that I'm now. I never grew an inch more or a centimeter more. So of course, I'm going to be successful at an age group level. But what I was missing was that skill department. And I think for age group swimmers, and hopefully everybody who's watching this understands that if you want to beat the current champions, the Leon Marchands or Cameron McAvoy's in sprint or something, you need to have better skills that they do. And I think this is the secret of age group swimming, because they will improve and you will improve just because you are growing to be an adult. But if you do it in a way that, like I did it, which was just through hard work without thinking about what swimming is really about, you will probably plateau at some point unless you really lift your ceiling of skills, because that is the time where you're learning how to swim. It is much easier to learn breaststroke or dolphin kicks or backstroke, whatever, at age 13 and 14 than it is on later years like I did when I was age 20 to get this kind of new improvements to go along. And I think this is the major thing why swimming is going forward all the time. But it's good to realize that the best athlete, or the athlete that I would see the most potential at age 15, is not the one who swims the absolute fastest times, but is the one who swims beautifully. Like if I can see a butterflyer whose butterfly looks better than Leon Marchand's, or I can't remember what that Hungarian guy's name, Christoph Milax, that's his name. that's the guy that I know that once they start training harder and they grow, they have a possibility to actually get to that level. And from the other perspective, think the earlier you've also learned the foundational things about, again, that kind of secret training that is not happening in the pool. So how to basically recover, how to go to bed in time to sleep enough, how to eat, how to think about your own development. So again, not just in terms of like success and medals, but about the process of improving your skills and how to approach training as a kind of a never-ending progression of learning to be better and all of that stuff. And this is the time for it, because if you're 20 and you start changing the habits in your life, it's going to be an uphill battle. But if you already learned that when you were age 14, that you have your life in order and you know what healthy food is and how to fuel for your training, this is like, that's almost more important than what you do in the pool. And of course, at the base of it, the most important thing is to learn to love the sport. And of course, this is something I did very well in retrospective. Again, thanks to Jani, thanks to Antti, thanks for the golden age of Finnish swimming, because I learned how to love the sport. Obviously, I'm still actively engaged with the sport as a coach. I will do that till the day I die. I love swimming, and I think all of this not suffering, but all of the tough stuff that I had to go through, I didn't really care about that, because for me it was clear that swimming is my life. So I definitely loved swimming enough that it didn't matter if I didn't improve in competitions or I had a shoulder surgery. It was still clear to me that I was going to swim. And how to develop that, I don't know, but at least I think the environment and your approach towards swimming as kind of a passion project has to be there. And I think coaches, this is kind of the thing that you need to develop, and also parents. If I look at my junior years, again, please don't do it like I did. In retrospective, again, me and the coaches in Finland should have really watched my strengths. So here I am at age 16. Again, I was 190 centimeters with zero strength training. I did no weight training until I went to the US. Well, I wouldn't say zero, but not really any kind of like heavy strength training. It was, again, from this endurance perspective. And I was still already this 90-kilo hunk of muscle, as you saw maybe on the pictures here early. And still, just because the culture was all about the 1500 freestyle, the 400 IM, 400 free, even breaststroke was kind of seen as a side thing, but definitely there was no sprinting going on, and we couldn't really get ourselves out of this culture. So I think Cameron McAvoy and this new sprinting kind of subculture that you can see in YouTube and Instagram, it's really, really healthy, and it's good because it gives people options, which I did not have. But in retrospective, not again for just about sprinting, but in general, we need to find, and you as a swimmer or the coach needs to find the swimmer's strength. My strength was always strength and speed and explosiveness and all of this stuff, but I never trained this until I came to the US and Grand Canyon University. Okay, at this time, and you can look at my career, you need to understand that since most people are still growing at this time, and you're also kind of shifting the training towards more adult type approaches, the development that you will experience is not linear. So it's not going to happen the way you want. We all would like to improve our best times at every competition. One competition during the winter time and one competition during the summertime, but that is not how it works. It's almost like if you just keep training and you're training the correct way and you're training your strengths, what you are gifted in, you keep building this kind of capacity in your body. And there are these moments where you kind of tip over the necessary threshold, and then you'll drop 2 seconds and 3 seconds. And this is exactly what happened to me. I think the training was not very smart or good, but we kept pushing extremely hard. Maybe I didn't improve in 3 years or 2 years, but then there was always this competition where I all of a sudden got into another level. And still, as a junior, understand that there are these 2 ceilings in swimming that we are really working. I would say there's almost like 3 ceilings, the third one being psychological, your mental ceiling. But we will have this physiological ceiling, meaning basically how fit you are. And then we have the technical ceiling. And again, as a junior swimmer, you got to understand that the physiological stuff will plateau at some point. And there's nothing you can do it. You cannot double your training volume to be more fit, or I don't know, do even heavier strength training. You will improve at the rate that you will improve. But what you can do is the technical stuff. And really, as a junior, what I, as a coach nowadays, would like to see is that this technical stuff goes ahead of the physical stuff, because then you know that there's something you can always improve from the fitness side. You can swim more, you can swim more often, you can swim with higher intensity. But if you're not technically, again, better than the best swimmers at the time or right now, then you're never going to reach their level. So as a junior, always remember what swimming is about. It's about those skills. And again, find improvements in training. And eventually, even if it feels like that you're on a plateau, and any competition you go and you don't find that you are getting the results that you want, understand that they will come if you find improvements in training. So I talk about the technical stuff, but also the training stuff. Like eventually, if you are better aerobically, like endurance-wise, you're faster, you're stronger, you have better technique, you will be better at competitions. But we just don't know when that happens. But if you know, and nowadays we know what level the best swimmers in the world are training, you can go and check out Bob Bowman's Texas group, what kind of practices they're doing. And if you see this, you can keep this as the level that you need to master. And if you get there in the training, it's just a matter of time until you also get the competitive results. Yeah. And what I want to end with today, and then I'll open the floor for some questions, because I think this will be much more better than just me talking here, is that the question in my mind, because I was kind of reflecting what made me swim for, again, 25 years. Most of the time, it was not going the way I wanted. And I only really found the magic when I was 25, 26, 27 years old, when I started hitting these 27s on long course and did this 26.9. Which again nowadays is not fast, but again at the time was really, really good, like an international level swimming. Is that I am not really sure motivation is enough. You need that intrinsic enjoyment, or may I say love, of the process of improving yourself, in this case in swimming. At least for me also, this understanding of how this process goes, like understanding that training is not about how much you swim or how hard you swim. All of those stuff is a part of it, but it's really a process of improving yourself. Now in swimming, there's an end goal, but it's the same end goal in schooling or in your job or relationship or anything like that. but it's about the process of falling in love in improving yourself through swimming. Because the competition goal, like when I was 8 years old and I was imagining myself winning an Olympic gold medal, that is just like a spark. And if that's the only thing that motivates you, you will not swim until you're 25 or until you're even 20 years old. But if you love going to the training and seeing whether you can be better today than you were yesterday, and you also love the fact that if you were not better today than you were yesterday, of thinking about, okay, how can I get better the day after, next week, next month? I think this is like the unlock. This is the key for swimming success. And unfortunately, nobody else, and I'm talking for the swimmers, can do this for you. It is your coach can, of course, help by being just a good human being to motivate you, but you have to find it from within yourself to get really interested about your own swimming, because almost everybody in the world are training within a group. And if you try to kind of outsource your motivation and your process to your coach, it will never work, because they have to divide their attention to dozens of swimmers, if it's a big group, but at least into multiple swimmers. And it is really the locus of control of your own swimming is always on yourself. And in that, you need that belief, because everybody can improve. I remember the first time somebody told me that I won't get to the international level was when I was about 15 or 16, when I first kind of plateaued in my results. And again, in Finland at the time, people were telling me that I was an age group star, but because I was already big, there was no way for me to improve. And I do think that under the same training that I did as an age grouper, it would have happened. But because I was lucky, Milton, Bill, Boomer came to Finland, they changed my training, or their influence changed the training that we did. I got that improvement. And then finally in the US, Alex, and then finally Steve Schaefer and American colleges that changed my training. And those were the places where I started to improve. But again, looking back, if you can do this earlier, so you don't have to wait for like 6 years to improve your 100 like I did, but just to understand that if you're just trying to find a way to keep progressing, everybody can find it. Like, I don't believe that there's no ceiling, that if you're not tall enough or I don't know, big enough in general, or you didn't do some kind of training when you were young, etc., you can always improve. You can always improve your endurance or your speed, your strength, your technique. That's all moldable. You can do that, but at the foundation level, you have to believe that that is true. It is a factual statement that is true, but it doesn't matter if your coach tells it to you. It has to come from you. You have to believe that you can do it. And if you want to be the best in the world, you actually have to believe that you can do it better than anybody else. And this is quite of a big thought for a 15-year-old. But I remember that I did think of this at that time. I don't know where it came from. Again, probably from those early experiences with the golden age of Finnish swimming. But nowadays, you can kind of find that belief from social media. Again, social media in a way is a bad thing, but for this, I think it's only positive. And then finally, again, for most people, swimming is not going to be about medals or records. I broke Finnish swimming records, so I got this. I got those college NCAA medals or wins and records. I got loads of Finnish medals, but I never got international competition medals. But what I did get it was, again, this process of improvement. So when I went to my master's studies, when I went to my doctoral studies, this seemed quite easy because it was the exact same stuff that I've been doing my whole life in swimming. having a goal, an end goal, and then tinkering with the process, trying different ways to study to get there as fast as possible. So it really is like a microcosm of life. So even if you don't become the best swimmer in the world, it doesn't matter because it's still teaching you something valuable. So, Dennis, I think I'm done with this part of the lecture. I would like some questions if there's anything anybody wants to ask.
Okay, swimmers, parents, you have an opportunity to say what you want to say, okay, or you want to ask, okay, coming from Bethel or coming from Tacloban City, okay, we do have swimmers, okay, which is really good on asking. This is your opportunity to ask, starting from Mom V of the Tacloban Sea Lions. Anyone who wants to ask question, this is your chance.
You can ask the question also, if you don't want to speak, into the chat, and then we'll relay them, and Coach can see them as well. Hey, but today, who do you watch, Eetu? Do you follow a lot of things on the internet, but who do you look for some insights with your coaching or the practices or things of that nature?
Well, lately, I've of course been watching all of the sprint discussion, Cameron McAvoy, listening to those podcasts. Unfortunately, I can't say there's any like really, really good coaching discussion other than this one podcast. Well, it doesn't matter to many, but it's a plugin. I don't get it. That's the name of the podcast, and you can go to Spotify to learn to found it. It's Nate McKay and Kyle Johnson. Those are the swim coaches who hold it. They have pretty good discussions. I enjoy that. But other than that, I of course have multiple coaches here in Finland, and of course also overseas in the US that I can always coach and kind of ask when I don't know what to actually do with my swimmers.
And then how can people follow what you're doing in their programs?
Well, I do have a YouTube channel. So Dennis keeps saying that I'm the Finnish national coach. I'm retired Finnish national coach in 2025. So right now I'm just a regular old club coach here in Finland who doesn't get much paid much for doing that. And then I have an online business, again, for coaching, for coaches education, all this kind of stuff. And related to that, I have a YouTube channel. But on that YouTube channel, to actually get some views, I mainly talk for triathletes and master swimmers. But I think the same principles that I talk there can not directly be applied to competitive age group swimmers, but indirectly. And what I mean by that is that if I suggest a program to train 3 times a week, just multiply it by 3, and then you're probably in the right number.
Tell us about your parents and your family, your siblings, or your spouse. That's always important, the way the family dynamics work.
Yeah, so my dad is also kind of an almost made it ice hockey player. So he played ice hockey in the, I guess, late 60s, early 70s. And just one level down from the professional leagues here in Finland. So he didn't make it, which of course makes me hate ice hockey and everything related to it. And this is a normal kind of dynamic. So I think this kind of goal-oriented approach towards sports was already insisted me when I was a kid, but I can't say that they never really forced me into sports or anything like that. Like that was not the dynamic at all, but they could see that I was not really a normal kid, And I was not normal kid or normal teenager. I was all about swimming 100%. Like my whole life revolved around swimming. I didn't mention, but I read my first swimming related book and sports science related book in 1997 when I was 11. And from that year on, I only asked money from my mother to order. They had these VH tapes. They had not Mike Barrow, Ed Moses tapes. I remember those. Then they had Auburn Sprint Secrets VHS S tapes. And I got all of those when I was age, 12, 13, 14. And that's all I watched at that age. So they could see that I was extremely passionate about swimming, and they pretty much gave everything that I needed to support that. So I wish I had done a little bit better in swimming just to kind of honor that, but it wasn't the case. And if we talk about right now, my wife is not from swimming, which is probably a good thing. She could care less about swimming, but I did meet her at a swimming pool. So again, a good reason to coach on deck as well.
And then, how are your knees and shoulders these days? You said you have problems with the knees. Sorry about that.
Yes. So my right knee has pretty much been injured since those years when I had my shoulder surgeries. But again, I can give you an example. And again, please, nobody does this. But when I had my shoulder surgery, because of the incision, I had to be out from the pool for 4 weeks. And after that, I spent 6 months kicking with my arm. Nowadays, they don't even do this, but at the time, the techniques were not as sophisticated. So I taped my arm into my body, and we did 2 sessions per day, 2 hours of kicking every day, of course, so 6 days a week. And on top of that, I rode a stationary bike in Finland because it's obviously snowing on the ground otherwise, every day for a couple of hours. Plus, I did gym, 3 times, or not really gym, but this kind of circuit training on it. So it's not surprising that I injured my knee at the time, and I really never really got over it. And of course, the problem is that even when my shoulder became healthy, I just continued swimming breaststroke, and I never gave it the rest that it deserved. But my shoulders are fine now, so the surgery did help. But this right knee is still, I have to be really, really careful not to do too many jumps or run or anything like that with that knee.
And then I have 2 more questions. Tell us about your grad school experiences and getting a PhD. Has that been helpful? What do you think about that?
Well, I wouldn't say the PhD is really helpful for anything other than your own resilience. So I graduated from GCU in 2013 with a bachelor's degree. And then I stayed as a graduate assistant for a couple of years, did my master's, and I think the master's degree was really, really helpful. But then it took me 9 years to get my PhD. Of course, mainly because in 2016, I moved away from the US. So I only had like 1 year of in-campus experience. And then for the next 3 years, I had to spend some time, a week or 2 in the US just studying. But the rest of the research and all of that, I was just doing, in my office alone, sending emails to people in the US. So again, it's very, very nice to say that I have a PhD, and I was really, really interested on the topic that I did it. But I would say after 5 years of studying the same stuff, that was quite enough. And then the last 4 years, I really had to dig deep to get it done. So yeah, the last, I would say last 6 years of my PhD, I just wrote the book, but I did get it done. and everybody can find it from the internet if you're interested about the research.
Well,
Okay,
congratulations
Mark.
on that.
Yeah, we really need to wrap up the session, okay? Because these are swimmers, and they're gonna be waking up by 4:30 in the morning by tomorrow. The attendees are actually my swimmers, okay, and they have their schedule for tomorrow also. Any more questions from the swimmers? Okay. Any more questions? Okay, if there's none, please open your windows and we'll take a picture together.
Coach,
Okay,
coach,
open your yes,
One
yes.
question coming.
coach.
Okay. Yes,
Uh,
ma'am.
uh, can I have a piece of advice? Oh,
Yes,
I will
yes.
just ask a piece of advice. As a parent, what is your best advice? That sometimes we keep on encouraging our children to swim, and it comes to a point that sometimes they are lazy and keep on making excuses, and they say, and they always say, we know that they are already annoyed. Oh, di ba? As a swimmer, what is your experience? And what should we do to help the swimmers to encourage them to go to swimming always and train?
To train
Yeah.
again as a parent, and I don't have kids that age, so I can just talk about what I go through with my age group kids. We have to define, okay, what is it that you want from swimming? So it doesn't really matter what the goal is, but the better they can understand. And of course, when they're 11, they don't really understand that. But as they're going towards high school, they need to understand that if they want something, there's a process of getting that. And again, how to do that, but is up to question, but somehow making it really clear that okay, you say you want to achieve this goal, you want to make national cut or swim under a minute in 100 freestyle, whatever that goal is. And then the coach and also the parents have to insist that okay, unless you do it this way, it's not going to happen. So again, the better you can instinct, like put this kind of process orientation into the kid, the better the result will be. But at the same time, like I probably said many times during my lecture here, it's really hard for a parent or a coach or anyone else to put this intrinsic motivation, the motivation that comes from the inside, into the swimmer. You can give the framework and make them understand, at least when they're like 14, 15 years old, that okay, you want this goal, then there's just no other option than do the work that is required to get there. And me, how I would approach it with age group athletes is like it is up to you. In my club, you don't have to come to practice, but then when you fail in the competition, I am also not afraid to tell them that, okay, these are the reasons why you did not make your goal. So, in my mind, you're not really wanting the goal because you're not willing to do the work. Not in a mean way, but it is just the fact of life that if you want something, you need to work on it. And then approaching it from a different perspective really quickly is, of course, that probably there are moments in every athlete's life and week and months where they are really inspired to go to the pool. So, again, using this YouTube example, if I watch 2004 Kosuke Kitajima, I don't know if you know that, but breaststroke or swimming, I
Yeah.
want to go to the pool immediately. So somehow, like finding these inspiration moments of other great swimmers, this might be a tool that coaches and parents can use on a swimmer when they don't want to swim. Okay,
Thank you so much.
no problem.
Any more questions, guys? Any more questions, guys? Okay, please open your windows and we'll take a picture. Coach Nilo, are you there?
Yes, coach. I'm here.
Open your yes. You will not go home. You will not go out yet. Okay, you will stay up to the next session. Okay. Again, take a picture. Come on, open your windows. All of you will take a picture. Swimmers. Okay, take a picture and put it on a group chat. Again, swimmers, take a picture and put it on the group chat. Last one. Open your camera. 3, 2, 1. Okay, Coach, we're very thankful. Okay, in behalf of the Sea Lions, we are very thankful, and Mom V is currently the standing team manager of the team. Okay, um, in behalf of the team, I'm saying thank you, Coach, for the short notice, and you gave us the opportunity to be with you and hear your side of how your journey on making the 26.9 on the 50-meter breaststroke. Okay, and guys, please make a heart, send a heart on the chat box. Okay, to say thank you. Okay, guys, please put a heart to say thank you. Okay, okay, Coach. Thank you, and we're going for the next session. Kids, you can sleep now because tomorrow we still have 5 o'clock in the morning session. Okay? Okay, guys, we'll make it about 5:30 in the morning. Okay?
Thank
We'll try
you.
to give consideration. Okay? Please put it on the chat, group chat, 5:30 in the morning tomorrow. Okay? Thank you,
Okay,
thank you.
coach. Thank you,
Yes.
everyone.
Coaches, please, we're going for the next session. Those coaches, please wait. We will start the next session. Swimmers, please, you can leave now. Swimmers, thank you. Coaches, stay. Please stay. Coach Nilo, okay. Okay, that's it. These are the coaches. Coach, we can start.
We can start.
Yes, coach.
All right. So, today's lecture is going to be a specific one, which is considerably easier for me than any of the lectures prior to this and that last discussion about my story, because it's hard to talk about your own experience. But Dennis asked me to discuss about the optimal microcycle design for short preparation. And just to make sure that we're all discussing the same language, the short preparation just means kind of the peaking cycle towards the competition. And the population that we're discussing is young swimmers, so like age groupers, maybe juniors. Because at first I have to first of all say that it is a little bit out of my comfort zone to be recommending these kind of peaking cycles for age group swimmers, for very young age group swimmers, but perhaps you can kind of put these similar principles in action, but not in a such a dense and harsh way as I'm going to go through here. So in my mind, when I was writing this and thinking about these concepts, I'm thinking of swimmers who are around 15 years of age, 14, 15. And then if the swimmers are younger, then I could maybe take some the ideas and qualities, but still keep working in a kind of lighter way towards that competition. Because as I was just discussing about my own career, I think as when you're an age grouper, you don't really want to try to maximize anything at your competitions. You just want to maximize your development within that. But of course, as you get older, then you need to start thinking about, okay, how do I take all of this capacity work within my year and then polish it in a way that I get the best performance out of my athletes with the training cycle that I do maybe 4 or 5 weeks before the competition. And at the same time, the cycle that I'm going to go through is kind of my adult cycle. So if I have a swimmer who's 20 years old, they're plateaued with the kind of traditional methods that usually people use, that I also use with age groupers, then it's all about this kind of utilization, really, really race specific training. Because in my mind, it's this sliding scale where first your training is general. As a youngster, you're training all the events, you're training your skills, you're training the endurance and the speed. And then little by little, as you go through the age group ranks and junior ranks, you start implying these phases of training where you're just trying to maximize the performance, because there is a difference between building the performance and then maximizing everything that's already in your body until, when you are training for the Olympics, then it's all this kind of maximizing training that I'm going to go through today. And we're going to start by just going through like the basics of microcycle design, whether it's like a developmental block or just this kind of short-term preparation. And it, again, like I always discuss, in a kind of a principle-led approach. So I can't tell you exactly what to do, but I can give you the general guidelines of how I would approach it. And I would say the scientific literature would kind of suggest to do that. And the foundational questions are, like I just said, how to utilize most of the swimmer's capacity, okay, and how to make sure that within this short-term kind of power oriented block of training, to make sure that you're actually recovering and adapting. For me, this is very easy, and we'll go through that. And then the end result is just, okay, how to peak your competitive performance. Again, won't make much of a difference for a 12-year-old, for a 15-year-old. It might make a big difference of qualifying for an international competition or not qualifying. Okay, and like I already kind of discussed, this is all based on the fact that you have already been training prior to this kind of block, because you can only express the fitness and the performance that you already have. And developing those basic qualities, endurance, speed, strength, and especially those skills, it takes time. So a 5-week block of training will not make a swimmer. It can refine a swimmer, but the real training is everything that came before that. And really, this kind of peak, again, within this kind of age group or junior swimmer context is really fast, and it is short-lived. So if you would only train in this type of a way, you would not really develop international level athletes. But of course, it's really desirable to do that before the major competitions you will have. And again, there's this long preparation, okay? So you are making sure the athlete develops in a way that you can keep developing the swimmer afterwards. And then this short preparation, again, it's about the competition. You don't care whether they will tank after that meet. It doesn't matter for you, because then you start building again towards another peak. And then with the adults, the reason why I use this kind of cycles all year long is that because there's not much development happening anymore, and the goal is only to hold the capacity and learning how to get everything out of the system. So this works within a season of training. So with the younger swimmers, it's really like seasonal. But then with an adult swimmer who's getting ready for Olympics, you could perhaps do this type of training for the last 6 months before the Olympics, because you're just trying to get everything out of them. And if you think about how to design a microcycle, it's really about organizing the training in a way that you can improve the physiological qualities or the performance qualities that you see the most beneficial for that swimmer. And if we're discussing about racing performance, then of course it's the performance in a defined event. So priority might be 100 freestyle, and priority 2 might be 50 freestyle or 200 freestyle, for example. Now, if we talk more generally, it might be that, okay, in this mesocycle, so a longer cycle or block of training, the priority is to improve endurance, and secondary improvement might be speed or threshold or something like that. And then you also define, okay, what you want to maintain at the level that you want. And really, it all boils down to understanding that you can't really improve everything at once, at least maximally. So you have to keep the goal. So if I want to improve, again, in this context, my 100 freestyle, then the last training that you do before the competition must reflect that. So if I would come and check out your training for 3 weeks, before the competition, again, the cycle, and I can't see that you're constantly talking about the race tactics and pacing and skills related to that, then it's not really a well-designed microcycle. And what I see, at least here in Europe and especially Finland, is that coaches are trying to do too much stuff, because the easiest way to improve something is to do more of it. And it doesn't really matter what it is. Even if it's speed training, this like preparing to swim the fastest 50, then really the microcycle must look like or has to have this quality where it's hitting that speed as a quality or 50 type of training as many times as possible within a week. Again, microcycle doesn't have to be a week, but it's usually in the world, think of in terms of like 7-day cycle. Okay, then sequencing. And this goes back to number one again. What needs to be done fresh? Well, we know that if you're training speed, that for sure needs to be done fresh. But I would say whatever your priority is, you need to make sure that within the week, again, point 3, you have sufficient recovery towards that quality. And a related concept is interference effect, meaning that you don't want to include training that will diminish the effectiveness of the most important training. And again, discussing about race performance, if you are racing only sprints, you do not need to work on your endurance 3 weeks out from the competition. It won't help that race to go faster. Now, again, if you're developing athletes, yes, you need to work on endurance, but at this point, you're only thinking in this short-term fashion. And then lastly, of course, it's the practicality, the reality. Okay, how many times per week you're training? Do you need to combine things in practice? Because even if the optimal thing would be to have 9 sessions per week, which makes the planning much easier because you can separate different qualities and different sets from each other, do faster stuff in the morning and longer stuff in the evening. to have minimal interference effect. So the speed training is not making the endurance training worse or vice versa. But if you have to combine them, then you just have to kind of, again, think in terms of this point number one, that you have to know what you're improving and then just put all your efforts into that and basically forget about everything else, again, within the context of getting ready for racing. And here is kind of a normal way to think about it. It doesn't really specify what you're training for, but if you're taking Sunday as a rest day and you think about what quality needs the most rest to be at the highest performance level in the week, it's definitely speed. Okay, because to improve speed, you need to be fast, and to be fast, you need to be recovered. So it only makes sense to start out the week with the fastest stuff that you are doing. And if you're training like pure speed towards a 50, then you want minimal hard work within that day as well. So no lactate work, no threshold or anything like that, because it would diminish the effectiveness of that speed work. So even if threshold work or like distance work would be your priority, I would try to not mix it with the speed stuff, because it makes that speed development diminish in quality. Okay. At the same time, speed work, you can do easy aerobic stuff always. It doesn't really affect that. But it's really not hard training. It's not going to drain you in a way that you can't train hard on Tuesday. So you're still fairly non-fatigued, and it makes sense to start out the week with the priorities. But after Tuesday, you already had 2 days of like probably high CNS kind of stuff, meaning that you need to recover. And in the middle of the week, it makes sense that you give recovery again. Well, once you take that recovery day, it makes sense to do the fastest stuff again on Thursday, and then priorities. And Saturday also can be hard, because after that, you'll get a full day of rest. Okay, the trade-offs, of course, in here are that if you're a full-on sprinter, like an adult, it's really easy to manage the microcycle, because you basically only have one thing that you're working, and that's speed. Similarly, if you're an open water or a distance swimmer, 1500, a mile swimmer, it's really easy, because then you just put those qualities on these priority days. And if you're a 50 swimmer, you're just constantly working on that speed. Where it becomes hard is that if you're swimming multiple events, or you're swimming those middle distance races where you need both the speed development, but you also need to work on your endurance, and those are competing adaptations, and then you need to make trade-offs within the microcycle of defining for yourself which one is more important. Does this athlete before the competition, does he need more endurance still, or would it be better to work from the speed side? And the traditional way is, of course, to work from the speed side before the competitions. But if the athlete is already fast enough for a 400 freestyle or something like that, then that's the wrong decision. You'll only make them more anaerobic, and then you'll end up with a really fast 400 swimmer who can't finish off the races. And of course, this goes into the other direction as well. Oh, okay. Here would be something that I would do with the long-term kind of a microcycle. So again, just an example, you would work with that speed. On Tuesday, you're still non-fatigued, so you can do some anaerobic power work, so lactate type of stuff. Wednesday, recovery day, just working on easy endurance. And then basically doing the same cycle here. But since we're doing strength training on this Friday, we allow some recovery here, and then work with some threshold, really, really hard sets on Saturday. And like I discussed earlier, if you are doing doubles, the way to do doubles effectively is just do or take this one session where you're working on multiple qualities, say Monday session where you're working speed and easy endurance, and do the fastest stuff in the morning when you are non-fatigued. And what I also see coaches doing, at least here in Finland and also in the US, is that they are always doing easy stuff in the mornings if they run morning practices. And I think this is a mistake, because even swimming easily, if it's sufficient volume to be, stimulative to make you better, it will influence the evening practice where you're trying to swim hard. Plus, if we think about national competitions, international competitions, you need to swim fast in the mornings to get the semifinals, to get the finals. So that's the way I do it. If I have doubles, the hardest, the fastest stuff is always in the morning, because you are supposed to be fresh in the morning. And then in the evening would be anything that is a little bit easier. But again, depending how much pool time you have, when you have access to gym, all of that would play in the practicality of it. And then if you look at this short term kind of maximizing the performance, and my reasons why I do it in a way that I'm going to present very soon, is that at this moment, before the competitions, we are not really trying to improve the athletes' basic qualities anymore. I'm not interested whether their max VO2 gets better or their strength is getting better or anything like that. I'm just trying to optimize the energy delivery towards that particular race, because we know that the body and the nervous system works in a way that it is specific towards that demands of the race. So you can build up your aerobic capacity within 3 months to a high level, but it doesn't mean that you're going to swim a faster 400 freestyle. It means that you have the potential to swim the faster 400 freestyle after you do this type of peaking work, because you're training the nervous system and the body in general to be as efficient at that speed that is required in the event. Again, if it's a 50, completely different process. If it's a 1500, completely different process. And luckily, while you're doing that, you're also training the race skills at pace. And of course, you want to train those as often as possible, as much as possible. So when you are behind that starting block, you don't have to think, because the racing start, the turn, the finish, the dolphin kicks, the breakouts, all of that is the thing that you know to do. So you don't have to think about it, and you can only, or the swimmer can only pay attention to the effort and racing that they're doing. And going back to that idea that the easiest way to improve something is to do more of it, it goes back to this kind of a removing of the interfering signals. So if you are a sprinter and an age grouper, yes, you need to probably work on some endurance within your years, but before the competition, if you just take all the endurance stuff away, you open up recovery capacity to do more speed work and again improve these two things faster. And since you're not thinking in long term, that is completely okay. And then lastly, even though you're doing this kind of really hard race pace type of training, you need to get rid of any accumulated fatigue. And you don't want fatigue from stuff that won't improve your competitive performance. So if strength training in the gym won't improve your 800 freestyle, you still probably want to do strength training at some point of the year. And it doesn't matter if it gets you slightly sore and makes the next day's practice worse. But again, 4 weeks before the competition, by just removing that from the program, you open up more recovery time. Maybe you're training less hours in the pool, which is a good thing, because then you can actually recover and adapt and get better on whatever you're training, but you're also starting to get that accumulated fatigue off. So there are two types of fatigue. We have acute fatigue. So if I do a hard session, like I'm going to present very soon, of course, I'm going to be tired. But then there's also the fatigue that accumulates from day to day to day and week and week and week and months and months and months of hard training. And that can be structural, it can be nervous system, and especially psychological. So, of course, when you go to a competition, you want your psychological fatigue, meaning that you feel tired in your motivation, in your mentality to fight within the race. You want those qualities to be as high as possible, and you want as little interference from the fatigue you had from waking up early to a practice or something like that. Hopefully that makes sense to you, that if you train 10 months in a row, you're going to be tired mentally. And within the last month before a competition, you want to get rid of that as much as possible. But at the same time, you're training really hard because you're trying to reproduce the competition performance in the practice as many times as possible. And when you're doing that, then everything else within that week must be super easy, or even just resting basically, to get rid of that fatigue that you have built up within the developmental season. Okay, let's see what the next one. And my whole philosophy for peaking training, or for the training that is specific to your race, and this is not developed by me in any means. This is an American system by coaches like, again, Alex Nikitin, that I just went through earlier, and Steve Schaefer used similar, Charlie Cunningham, all of these guys, is about correlating the competition performance into a training sets, and then just trying to improve the numbers, because you can be quite sure that for a 50-meter sprint, if you can improve your 25s either from a push or from a start, your 50-meter performance will improve. If they are not improving in the last few weeks before the competition, then there's really no reason why you would get this bump in performance. Okay, similarly, for the 100, doing 25s with about 1 minute interval, like 1 to 3 type of a rest to work or work to rest ratio, you can be pretty sure that your easy speed, your opening speed for the first 50 will improve if you improve that set. On the back end, doing 50s on 2 minutes, pretty sure if you improve that set, either in volume, so you can sustain more of that pace in practice, or just swimming faster, your back end 50 or back end 100 will improve. For the 200, I also have two types of sets, doing 50s with about 1 minute interval, of course, depending what kind of swimmer you or what speed you're swimming, but about 1-to-1 work to rest ratio. It really works, the kind of pacing that you can do in the middle part of your 200. So the second and the third 50, a little bit less for the last 50. And for the last 50, I have found that it's really 75s and 100s with about, again, 1-to-1 kind of work to rest ratio. And that really works the last 50. For the 400 and 800, similar type set. The correlations are not as good because just pure aerobic development matters much, much more here. But doing hundreds for the 400 with a very short rest, like 15, 20 seconds, maybe up to 30 seconds for those 200s, and again 200s towards the 800, it correlates really well. And you can be almost certain that if you improve that set within the last 4 weeks before the competition, your swimmer will swim faster. For the 1500, I don't have the numbers, but I would imagine doing the same kind of stuff, maybe expanding a little bit on that would improve that. And if you want to start correlating these into your race performances, I put the numbers on parentheses. And what I mean by this is that, let's say you want to improve the back half of your 100, and not a guarantee, but like 95% of the time, if the swimmer can do 6 to 10 50s, again, depending what type of a swimmer, if they're more sprint kind of guy coming from a 50 to 100, then it's about 6 repetition. And if they're more endurance type guy, if they can do about 10 repetition at some speed, let's say 30 seconds, and you go into a competition, you add the turn, and that's going to be the second 50 time. It's just the correlation is almost 1-to-1 in my experience. Again, if the swimmer goes out too fast, then everything goes out the window. But if they are doing the race in the correct kind of pacing way, same thing for the 200. If you can do something between 12 to 16 50s with that 1-to-1 rest ratio, it is going to be the second 100 pace in the competition if you didn't start out too fast. So this is how it works. And the thing is, when you are peaking towards competition, it is pretty much only this kind of stuff that you're doing. You're just approaching your race performance from slightly different perspective. For the 100, you need some speed work. For the 200, you also need some speed work and maybe some even higher endurance work. But of course, if you're only swimming a 50, basically you would only need to work on that speed side. Oh. And the reason is not only physiological, because it's also about hitting those race skills multiple times. And if you improve those race skills in the last month before the competition, you're also improving those race correlating sets. So when you're doing, let's say, 12:25s, you're not only trying to swim them faster any way possible, you're trying to swim them faster by finishing better, doing better dolphin kicks or pullouts in breaststroke, doing better breakouts, controlling your tempo, your distance per cycle, whatever that is, better. And that is, of course, directly transferable to your competition. Like if you are able to improve your breakouts and kind of automatize that in your practice before the competition, then those will be better at the race. Race planning, the tactics. So for example, doing those 50s on a minute for the 200 development, if you go out too fast in that set, then most likely you will start to fail at rep number 3, rep number 4. So you need to learn inherently inside the set to be successful on how to pace the early parts of the race. So they are really working on this tackle of learning how to race from multiple perspectives, not only the fitness stuff, but also the way you want to swim in a race. Now, training prerequisites. So I probably already said this multiple times, but you have to have something to peak from. So of course, this kind of hard, high intensity training might give you some physiological improvement, but really it's about learning how to use your capacities towards a racing performance. So if you try to swim a long distance events, I still think developing your aerobic machinery throughout the year, that's the unlock. That's the thing that makes you better at it. But of course, in that last 4 weeks, you can try to get as high of a percentage of your maximal capacity inside your racing. Okay, if you think about sprinting, you probably have to improve your strength levels within the year to some level and your maximal speed. But even for 100, you don't need to develop your maximal speed at this moment. What you need is the ability to be able to swim at as high of a percentage of your maximal speed for the duration of that 100 race. And that's basically the definition of speed endurance. And then lastly, I want to go kind of through why this kind of block. again, for age groupers and juniors, can't really be longer than maybe 6 weeks or so, is that you have this kind of residuals. And this I learned from Doc Councilman's book. This is the first place where I read it in the 60s already. They kind of knew that if you're not going to train any endurance for more than 30 days, it's going to start deteriorating quite fast. Again, I'm not sure it's really 30 days, because any kind of training where you're getting out of breath will at least maintain your aerobic capacity, not really indefinitely. In adult athletes who've spent years and years building that, I think it's pretty indefinite. Like they can hop on and do a 6K workout any day, even if they haven't done one in 2 years, because they have this ability. Okay, strength training, and this is important for sprinters, that has the absolute fastest decay. So in like 8 days, unless you're doing maximal strength, or like, let's say 15 days, it starts to decay to some level. Now in swimming, it is not a strength sport, it's a power sport in case of sprinting. So I'm not sure how much that matters, but something to really think about, that if you're trying to pull like a 10-week peaking phase, you might not be really happy with the results, because you're not maintaining the strength qualities with the sprinters. Again, the speed stuff, it's not really an issue because it's neural in nature, and I think you can quite easily maintain it within this, because if you just do like 2 sets of 4 times 15 meters in your weekly cycle, you're covering all your bases for maintaining your speed. So it's not really an issue, but it's something to really understand. And what is this really based on is that you're maximizing the development, and then you're utilizing or polishing that development through this kind of cycle. And this is how it would kind of look for sprinters. So if I would be training once a day, which I would if it's a 50 to 100 swimmer, even an age grouper, even if they're doing doubles within the developmental season, before the competition, I would switch them on once per day kind of work. But of course, you can still integrate some doubles if you think that they need that. But again, on day number 1, on Monday, I would start with only speed development. So even if they're swimming just 100, it's good to get faster still, because you're taking all of that endurance training away that you had in the previous cycle. On Tuesday, for age groupers, I would take 2 correlating sets. For example, those 25s on a minute and 50s on a 2, and just do those. And then as you go along the cycle from week to week, try to improve that. On Wednesday, I would just work on racing skills, maybe some aerobic kind of maintenance work, but at really, really low level. Then when I would come back on Thursday, I would again hit that speed, but this time from just maintenance perspective, and do the same sets I did on Tuesday, again with the mindset that you have to improve them. And I'll show later how to improve on those. Friday, I would give out, again, easy day, just working on skill, some easy stuff. And then on Saturday, I would come back and do those 2 sets again. And then Sundays, I would rest. Now, if I were to do doubles, let's say this is a professional athlete, for some reason, it wouldn't be really age grouper, I would do those 100 sets in the morning, and maybe you could add this kind of 200 correlating set for the evening, because you have more recovery time. You could also add it somewhere here, but doing 3 of these sets per day is very, very hard, and we want to avoid fatiguing the athletes too much. You don't want to make sprinters, especially if they're doing a 50, too tired, too close to the competition. So this would be my quote unquote optimal cycle for sprinters. Then if I would think about short-term peaking for the 200 athlete, I would still start the Monday with that speed development. Now on the speed development day, perhaps I could add these 25s here, and then just do the 200 work on Tuesday, but in this case, I kept it simple. So after the Sunday rest day, trying to improve my maximal speed. And then it's a very similar way. On Tuesday, hitting those two correlating set, working on that 100 pace, and then working on that 200 pace. And the reason why there's only one set of 200 work and not 2 sets per day is because it's almost impossible to do 2 of them, at least for a normal age group and junior athletes, because it's just so hard to do that. Wednesday, give recovery. Repeat on Thursday exactly what you did on Tuesday. Friday, give recovery, work on skills. And then Saturday, again, hitting those same sets, but I would work on that last 50 once per week, maybe doing those hundreds on 2, because then you get the rest on Sunday. And again, the whole idea here is that every time the athlete comes to the pool, the idea is that you need to show me some improvement. You need to either improve the numbers by exhibiting better skills, or we are actually seeing this nervous system efficiency and maybe some optimizing of the energy delivery to the muscles within these weeks. And then I think I also have a distance swimmer example. There we go. And now no surprises here. I would work on a 200 set and a distance set on those days and just do that on the 3 days, give enough recovery, maybe some aerobic development or like maintenance work more on those Mondays and Friday and Wednesday. But it's quite easy. Now, the distance swimmers might need to do doubles just to kind of keep their endurance levels up. And on those days, I would certainly do it on the hard days, not on the recovery days. And in distance swimmers' case, I would do the distance work first in the morning because that is more important. And then the 200 set, which for them is more like a speed set, a second in the day. And you don't have to really, like in any of these examples, it doesn't really matter what the sequence of these sets are. Like even for a sprinter, you could do the longer stuff first in the session, and then do the faster stuff or the shorter stuff next. And if you have sufficient time, I would actually start out start out with the 25s on 1 week, and then on the second week I would start with the 50s, just so they can show the improvement, because of course there's still going to be some fatigue from the first set towards that second set there. And then this is the whole idea of this kind of peaking. So the goal, like I probably told ad nauseum here, is to improve. And the way you know that it is actually working, and it should be the guiding principle, like the outer regulation and how do you adapt this to each athlete, is that you are seeing improvement that is something like this. So what we are trying to do is one shift in the major energy delivery mechanism towards that particular pace. So in this case, this athlete wants to swim 100 meters under a minute, or let's say 00. This would probably be about 101 type of a swimmer if they can hold 14.5s here. And when we would start this, maybe 5 weeks before the competition, they could maybe hold 10.25s at this pace, and then they would fizzle out. Okay, next time I do the set, I want more volume. And for the first 3 weeks or 2 weeks, however long you're going to run it, I would like to see more repetitions, because we're looking for more efficiency. And what it means is that you are making a pace that was maximal for them. It was speed endurance, maximal endurance for them, into something else, basically turning it into more aerobic. Okay, so it becomes easier, because doing 10.25s here on week number 1, and then on week number 3 you're hitting 18, it's not the same energy system anymore. It is easier for the swimmer to hold that pace. Okay, and the only way to get this kind of progression is again from this age group mentality that you haven't done this type of training prior to this peaking phase. Like with adults, this will probably take 3 months to get this kind of improvement. But if it's something new, it's a novel stimulus, the improvement will be very, very, very fast. And once you can kind of see this kind of shift happening, hopefully everybody understand what I mean by that. I think it's quite intuitive system. You shift the goal, and now you're trying to move back to left. So you start dropping the numbers, and that's the taper that you do towards the competition. So this was a 5-week program, 5-week peaking, and they came up to 18. And now on week number 4, we do the exact same set, but I'm asking them to do 12 25s and hold 14.0. Next time, I'm only going to ask for 10, hold under 14s. Next time, only 8 25s, holding 13.5s. And then week 5 is the competition week. We're only going to do this once, and only 6 25s, holding those 13.5s. And now, again, we are shifting to the left, meaning that we're moving again in the energy systems more into anaerobic territory. And this would be the exact same thing if you're doing those 50s towards the 200s. Just put 50s there. Maybe you start from 80, and basically you're trying to double the amount the swimmer can do. You don't have to double it. Even if you can add 50%, that's already a success, or even like less than that. It shows improvement, because once you hit those higher numbers, it is quite easy to ask the swimmer in that last 2 weeks that, okay, we're doing, 33% less repetitions or 50% less repetitions, but I want you to swim faster. And this peaks all the anaerobic system towards sprinting and the 200, and then you taper off on that last week. And then just kind of general ideas for this, that for performance, and I know I've already given lectures on this for this organization, that specificity is the key. Like, if I want to get faster within a 4-week window or a 6-week window, it's of course I need to train specifically towards that race. And this is all that I was going through here for this kind of peaking phase. And all of the questions that I probably might get today, my answer is that, okay, are you able to add reps? So if you ask me that, okay, my swimmer seems really tired doing the same set 3 times a week, then my immediate response is, okay, try to do 2 times a week and see if you are able to add reps, or then later on within this cycle, able to swim faster. Because that is the goal. That is the goal. If that's not happening, there's nothing magical about doing 25s and 50s. It's just a framework, and you could use 35s or 75s. It doesn't really matter what the actual set is. It can be combinations and all of this stuff, as long as you understand the idea that you are just first aiming to become efficient and then aiming to become faster in it. And if that is happening, it was a successful peaking process. Now, if the swimmer is not swimming faster at the competition, then it's not really about the peaking phase. It's about the training prior to that. And also, of course, the mentality, maybe the tactics in the race. They probably just went out too fast, and then, no training can really help with that. Okay, what can you expect with the age groupers and juniors? Maybe with this kind of 5-week period, you can improve 1% on what you could improve by just doing quote unquote normal training. And with really, really young age group athletes, I don't even think there's any difference. Again, I would not use this with 12-year-old boys. There's really no reason to do that, because they keep improving 1% per month just by improving their technique and just swimming slightly more, doing like an intelligent progression. But of course, at some moment, again, if they need to qualify for again, I think I'm talking for Asians. So Asian juniors, if you have such a competition, we have junior Europeans, and I want my athlete to get there, then I would apply this kind of training to get that final percent out from it. And in the same vein, for age groupers, and again, in my language, age groupers would be those athletes who are 13 to 14. I would maybe use this once per year, because you can't really spend 10 weeks out of the year doing stuff to make them not artificially, but just like forcing development on them. They should be developing all the time anyways. Then as you start transitioning into juniors, then maybe I could use this twice per year. Once before the winter nationals and then once before the summer nationals. Other than that, the training would be very similar. Of course, they're constantly training a little bit more. And then for those junior athletes, especially if they're sprinters, then they could do this like 3 to 4 times a year, because they are now transitioning into being seniors. And then with the seniors, I would use this type of training just all the time. But really, it's always a question on what still works. Like if I can be quite confident that my 14-year-old girl can go to any competition and just keep improving all the time, I don't need to make it complicated like this. I don't need to force them to swim more and faster and harder. I can just keep normal training and they keep improving, but there will become a time where they start plateauing. And if you don't train specifically, the development will stop. And I've said this in other lectures as well. You want to hold this card in your deck so you know exactly what to do when the first time comes, when the athlete is plateauing. Let's take again this 14-year-old girl, and they're swimming their 200 freestyle in 220, and the next competition they're doing 220, third competition 220, and the nationals are coming. I know that if I apply this kind of training, they're going to swim 217, and then we're all happy. But again, if I know that they will swim this 217 anyways, then I wouldn't use it. I would then kind of keep it in my deck until I need to use it, maybe at the level when they need to swim 212 or whatever that time may be. And I think that was my lecture today. Hopefully there are some questions. I think this is quite simple, at least in principle, and also kind of intuitive way of peaking for a competition. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, guys? We have Elias from Nairobi, Josephat from I think it's Iriga, Marianne from Quezon City, and Ever Training from Jensen. Any more questions, guys?
Yeah, and as always, you can also write it in the chat.
Yeah.
I want to talk.
Elias, you are from Nairobi. You can
Coach, how's your season going right now, this time of year? What's happening with your club team?
Club team. So, as always, the age groupers and juniors are doing great. So they make me look very good at competitions. Lots of improvement. And I just opened our competitive season with Matti. So he's made a comeback. Wasn't really happy with the results. 100 breaststroke was quite good. But the 200, for whatever reason, the morning swims were super easy. So he definitely has the capacity. But then in the evening, when he tried to swim faster, he was not really able to improve the performances. But I think it's quite clear what we need to do training-wise to get, again, more utilization out of him. And then I also now has this Latvian guy my first ever real 50 sprinter, and he has also improved tremendously and qualified for the European champs. So I'm happy to have two people going to the European champs this summer on the adult side, and then I also have one youngster who's going for the junior Europeans. So things are going well, but again, with the youngsters, I'm always doubting myself whether we're training enough, because I hear what people are doing around me and other and in other parts of the world, but I try to keep a calm head and just go with the plan like I just discussed in here as well, without uh, much of hard training. But with the adults, yes, they are training really hard. Like Matti is like this week. I can't imagine that many other people in the world could survive the sets that he did. Again, with the quality, not just survive, actually like doing them at the very high level.
And then you spoke of you love to see the beautiful strokes, the beauty. But then how do you get the speed? You know, is there, you know, some people can swim beautiful and really stay in one place all too long. You know, they're not quick. You know, that speed is sort of hard to coach.
Well, again, when I'm talking about beauty, I think there's a difference. And here in Finland, most people, like right now, I don't think I have any age groupers even who will ever swim 800 freestyle or 1500. Their psychology is not just equipped with that. Everybody is 100 and 200 swimmer, basically. And for me, it does mean beautiful swimming at race pace. But the way I do it with the age groupers and the juniors, and I actually had our normal cycle with the people who train once per week, I do put a big emphasis on speed. And I am not only talking about this Cameron McAvoy's type 25s all out. My speed workouts are about learning how to swim fast. So they're not really physiologically demanding, but again, I like to see, for example, in freestyle, that index of coordination. So I can swim beautifully if I'm doing this kind of catch-up stroke and really thinking about it. But I like to see great mechanics when they're actually swimming fast. And I think the way to do that is this kind of lactic speed training where you're not pushing all out, but sufficiently fast that you need to use your sprinting mechanics, and then short repetitions and lots of them. So like an example would be, 16 times 20 meters with 1 minute of rest. For me, this is still speed training, but I'm not pushing, I'm not timing. I'm trying to at least teach the principles of connectivity and quality of movement, and how they're crashing the arm into the water and all of that stuff. And then some people are, of course, much more gifted with that, and some people are less. But if you just keep doing that and they come to the training 100 times in a row, then they'll be faster and their stroke will look better when they're at pace swimming.
Thanks. Hey, you've done a great job
Okay.
today. Thank you.
Okay, that's we would like to say thank you. And coach, again, we will be sending you our way of the 2026 way of giving a certification for appreciation. We have a new system. We will be sending you, coach. Now, we would like to acknowledge that most of the coaches now are weekly on the competition, and they are focused on the summer programs, uh, especially the whole Asia. So we are expecting very few seminars for this April and May. Okay, so please bear with us. We're trying to catch up with the number of 150 seminars for the whole year. So we're still catching up with 2 seminars per week. Okay, Coach, thank you so much, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Coach.
you.
Thank you, thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Fine, thanks. So Dennis, you've
Imagine building this beautiful multi-million-dollar public library right in the center of your town.
Right, just a massive community investment.
Exactly. You construct a building, you put in all the shelves, you turn on the lights, and then you just refuse to buy any books.
Or, hire a single librarian.
Yeah. And if a city did
Oh,
that,
I was
you would
just
call
gonna
it
take it
a
well.
scandalous waste of taxpayer money.
It would
Then I
be on the
play
front
a
page of the
play a
local paper.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But right now in your city and, well, cities all across the country, that is exactly what we're doing with public pools.
It really is. It's wild when you think about it.
Welcome back, especially to all of you out there we affectionately call the learner.
The folks who love to understand the hidden mechanics of how the world actually works.
We're looking at a piece of infrastructure you probably drive past all the time.
Almost certainly.
We've been poring over this comprehensive municipal strategy playbook, a source document literally called City Pools. And the mission of this is to completely reframe how you view local public pools.
Because we have to stop seeing them as just seasonal money pits or basic recreational amenities.
Right. Instead, this document reveals how they are critical, life-saving civic infrastructure.
Yeah, infrastructure that's actually capable of solving major public health and workforce challenges.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand why a municipal strategy document like this even exists, we have to talk about the stakes.
And the stakes are incredibly high.
Literally life and death. We are talking about a severe, ongoing public health crisis here.
We are. The grim reality that the data in our source material highlights is that drowning is the leading cause of death for children ages 1 to 4 in the United States.
Wait, the leading cause?
Not a leading cause.
The leading cause.
That is just a staggering fact to sit with. I mean, more than car accidents, more than illness.
Exactly. And the trend lines over the last few years, they're moving in the wrong direction.
Which is terrifying. It is. According to the CDC data analyzed in the playbook, between 2020 and 2022, over 4,500 Americans died from drowning each year.
Wow.
Yeah, and that represents a jump of 500 annual deaths compared to 2019. We are actively losing ground.
And it's not hitting every community equally either. When you look at the equity and racial disparities in this data, they are severe.
Extremely severe.
Like drowning rates for Black Americans were 28% higher in 2021 than they were in 2019.
Yeah.
And the research shows that 1 in 3 Black adults cannot swim. Plus, when you look at income levels, 79% of children in households earning under $50,000 a year have little to no swimming experience whatsoever.
What's fascinating here is, well, when you look at those numbers systemically, you realize these aren't just unpredictable, tragic accidents.
Right.
They are the highly predictable results of a massive gap between the physical pools we've built and the programming we actually deliver.
The concrete pool is just sitting there in the neighborhood, but the access to the instruction that makes that water safe simply isn't there.
Precisely. A pool without programming is just a very expensive puddle.
I hear that, and obviously the safety data is entirely undeniable. But I want to push back on this a bit, or at least, inject some stark reality.
Sure, go for it.
Municipal budgets are incredibly tight right now. City councils are fighting over pennies.
Oh, absolutely.
You look at a city like Pittsburgh, right? They have a historically great aquatic tradition.
Right.
But they've halved their outdoor pools down to about 15 over the years.
Right.
Cincinnati went from 44 pools in the late 90s down to 24 today. Cities are literally filling pools with dirt and paving over them because the maintenance costs are just eating them alive.
Yeah, we see it all the time.
So how on earth can we ask a city manager to spend more money on aquatic programming when they can barely keep the streetlights on?
It's the logical question, and honestly, it's exactly what every city council brings up.
Right.
But the answer in the playbook clarifies a massive misconception. The solution isn't necessarily building a new $10 million mega facility. The solution is maximizing the assets that already exist. Closing a pool in an underserved community to save a few $1,000s on maintenance just compounds inequities that have existed for generations.
Because you're taking away the only resource they have.
Exactly. The fix isn't massive capital expenditure, it's operational strategy. It's taking the water you already have and running it as an efficient, self-sustaining business.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of how you do that. Because if drowning is the primary crisis, the direct response has to be teaching people to swim.
Absolutely. Play number 1 in the document.
Right. And there was a stat here that absolutely stopped me in my tracks. Formal swim lessons reduce the risk of drowning for 1 to 4-year-olds by 88%.
88%. Just think about that from a public health perspective for a second.
That's unbelievable.
A single, relatively simple intervention that reduces a leading cause of childhood death by nearly 90% is almost unheard of in modern medicine or public safety.
Yeah, that single statistic alone justifies every tax dollar put into Learn to Swim programming.
It really does. But here is the critical pivot that city managers need to understand.
What's up?
Learn to Swim isn't just a safety intervention. When structured correctly, it is the financial engine of the entire facility.
Because the margins on group lessons are phenomenal.
Highly efficient. I mean, think about the math here.
Right.
If you are charging a very reasonable $8 to $15 per participant for a group lesson, and you have one instructor teaching 6 to 8 kids.
That adds up fast.
It does. That single instructor can generate thousands of dollars a week for the facility with virtually zero additional overhead. The water is already there. The electricity is already paid for.
Right. The playbook points to the Geneva Park District in Illinois as a prime example of this.
Yes, great example.
They fill 770 family enrollments per summer strictly through their Learn to Swim program.
And their primary constraint on revenue growth isn't a lack of demand in the community.
No, it's literally just running out of physical pool space.
Yeah, exactly. But the strategy doesn't stop at just offering the class. And this is where the operational genius, the glue, really kicks in with Play 8.
Right, packaging and scheduling. Because you can't just teach a kid to blow bubbles and float, hand them a cheap certificate, and say goodbye.
Right. But most municipal facilities operate in terrible bureaucratic silos. A family signs up, the kid finishes level 3 swim lessons, they get their little Pipper certificate on a Friday, and then
nothing.
Nothing. The facility expects the parent to remember to go online 3 weeks later, navigate some clunky municipal website, and register for level 4.
And what happens?
They don't. Friction kills the process, and the family disappears.
So what does the playbook say to do instead?
It argues you have to aggressively manage that transition. When they finish level 3, the instructor hands the parent a level 4 registration flyer right there on the pool deck.
And they sign up at the checkout desk on their way to the car.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? It's basically the would you like fries with that model, but applied to public safety.
That's a great way to put it.
It removes the friction from continuing the journey. You're capturing them while the value of the lesson is literally standing right in front of them, wrapped in a towel.
Precisely. You are building a continuous relationship, not just processing a one-off municipal transaction.
Right.
And that brings us to the most vulnerable point in that relationship. The playbook identifies a highly specific drop-off period that plagues almost every pool in the country. They call it the gap age.
Yes, the gap age. Let's dig into this because the logical next question is, what happens when a kid graduates from Learn to Swim but is too young to work?
Right.
The mechanism of this failure is fascinating. A kid finishes all their Learn to Swim levels. They're 8, maybe 10, maybe 12 years old.
They're water safe.
Yeah, they can swim fine. But they are entirely too young to legally get a job as a lifeguard.
And maybe they just don't have the desire or the genetics to be an intense 6 days a week competitive swimmer.
Exactly. So what do?
Historically, the facility offers that kid absolutely nothing, so naturally they leave.
They go play soccer or they go play video games.
Yeah. And when they leave, the pool doesn't just lose a casual participant.
No.
They lose the single most important resource they have, their future workforce.
Which transitions us from keeping kids in the water to solving a national staffing crisis.
Yeah.
Because we are in the middle of a massive workforce crisis in this space.
We really are.
The 2025 Aquatic Trends Report, cited in the document, states that 41.8% of facility managers report lifeguard shortages.
Nearly half the industry literally cannot open their doors fully because they can't find enough teenagers to sit in the chair.
And solving that national staffing crisis starts with those 8 to 14-year-olds we just talked about. Play 2, the retention bridge.
Right. If you want a 16-year-old lifeguard, you have to cultivate the 10-year-old.
And the solution here relies heavily on game-based middle school programs, things like Otterball,
Which is basically a chaotic, fun version of water polo.
right? Or snorkeling clinics or junior lifeguard camps. The mechanism is simple. You keep them engaged, you keep them physically in the water, and they naturally transition into your workforce.
Because the cost of doing it the hard way, relying on random high schoolers applying off the street, is staggering.
How bad is it?
Well, Place 7 focuses on staff development, and the document notes it costs the facility between $500 and $1,500 just to recruit, interview, hire, and train a single new lifeguard.
That adds up so incredibly fast.
It does. Retaining just 10 staff members who might otherwise have turned over saves a facility up to $15,000 annually.
Wow.
Yeah, and facilities that actually implement structured staff development see a massive 35% jump in return rates year over year.
That's huge. And the examples in the text are great. Look at LA County's junior lifeguard program.
Oh, yeah.
It costs about $635 per child to run, but they view it as an investment because it explicitly builds their future lifeguard pipeline.
Or look at the Tualatin Hills Parks and Recreation District in Oregon. They run an earn-to-learn program.
I love the earn-to-learn concept. Let's explain how that works. Because traditional lifeguard certification costs a couple $100s up front, right?
Right. It's a massive barrier to entry.
Yeah, especially for a lower-income teenager who needs a summer job. They can't afford to pay $200 just for the privilege of applying for a minimum wage job.
Exactly. So, Tualatin Hills flips the script and actually pays the candidates an hourly wage while they train and get certified.
Which is brilliant.
It removes the financial barrier entirely, which broadens your applicant pool exponentially.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is exactly like a baseball farm system.
That's a perfect analogy.
You don't just sit around the front office and complain that there are no pro players walking off the street ready to play in the World Series. You intentionally build a minor league system to develop them.
Yes.
Those 12-year-olds playing Otterball on a Thursday afternoon, those are your future Tuesday morning lifeguards. You're not hoping to magically find a lifeguard in a tight labor market. You are manufacturing one.
Manufacturing one is the perfect way to articulate it. You are internalizing your supply chain.
Right.
You're taking control of your own labor market. But, let's follow the logic here. Let's say you've executed this perfectly.
Okay.
You fixed the youth pipeline. You've got your lifeguards. Your Learn to Swim program is humming. But then September rolls around. The kids go to school.
And what happens to that massive, incredibly expensive concrete asset at 10:00 a.m. on a Wednesday?
Crickets. It sits totally empty.
The water is still circulating, the chemicals are still being used, but nobody's there.
Which means we have to talk about adults. Because making a pool financially viable means filling the dead hours.
And the stats here are wild. According to the research, 28 million Americans swim primarily for fitness.
That's Play 3, adult fitness. And from an operational standpoint, it is the most loyal, reliable demographic a facility can possibly attract.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Older adults, in particular, desperately need low-impact cardiovascular exercise.
Right, that makes sense.
The Geneva Park District, which we mentioned earlier, has a program called AM Aquafit at 6:00 a.m.
Okay.
It maintains incredibly consistent enrollment year-round because that specific demographic will show up reliably week after week, year after year, regardless of the weather.
Which makes me want to ask a pointed question here about how we design our cities.
Yeah.
Why is adult fitness so often treated as a complete afterthought in municipal planning?
It's a great question.
Are we just so culturally obsessed with youth sports that we completely ignore the fact that a 65-year-old water aerobics participant is arguably a much better customer?
I think we are.
I mean, they will show up religiously every Tuesday for a decade, whereas a kid ages out of a youth swim team in a few years.
It's a massive blind spot. We tend to view public pools entirely through the lens of nostalgia. Summer childhood memories, splashing around with friends.
Sure, the classic summer movie scenes.
Right. We don't view them through the lens of lifelong wellness. But the financial reality of running these facilities requires us to look at adults.
And that economic argument extends to Place 6, competitive pathways, right?
It does. You have to rent your lanes out. You rent to youth clubs, to high schools, and specifically to U.S. Master Swimming, which has 55,000 adult members nationally.
And those groups are willing to pay a premium for guaranteed water time.
They absolutely are. Renting lanes at $15 to $40 an hour guarantees base revenue.
Which is great for the facility.
But the mechanism goes beyond just the pool's balance sheet. It brings a massive economic multiplier to the whole town.
How so?
Well, the playbook cites aquatic research in Bellevue, Washington. When they hosted regional swim meets, it brought 300 to 2,500 participants and spectators into the city daily.
Oh, wow.
Think about the cascade effect of that. Those 2,500 people have to sleep somewhere, so they fill local hotels.
Right.
They have to eat, so they pack local diners and restaurants. The pool ceases to be just a place to swim. It becomes an economic engine for the local chamber of commerce.
And you don't even have to host a massive Olympic level tournament to see that kind of community impact.
No, definitely not.
The playbook outlines Play 4, community activation. And this is really about creating front doors for the broader community, getting non-swimmers through the door.
To build political goodwill.
Exactly. I love this example. Columbus, Indiana hosts an end-of-season dog swim right before they drain the pool for winter.
It's such a fun idea.
They charge $5 a dog, and one year they drew 144 dogs.
Aw.
Can you imagine the sheer chaos and the joy of 144 wet golden retrievers and Labradors in a public pool?
It would be incredible.
Or, on a more regular basis, hosting birthday party packages that can command $150 to $400 a pop.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that dog swim isn't just a cute photo op for the local newspaper. It is political armor.
Political armor.
Yeah. A facility hosting an annual dog swim that brings out 150 local families, a lucrative birthday party every Saturday, and a Masters tournament on a Sunday is incredibly hard for a city council to defund.
Ah, I see.
If a local politician tries to close a pool that is just an empty concrete basin, nobody notices. But if they try to close the community hub where everyone's dog swam last weekend, they face a riot at the next town hall.
That makes perfect sense. The pool ceases to be a line item expense on a spreadsheet and becomes deeply emotionally woven into the community fabric.
Exactly. It generates essential political goodwill.
Okay, so let's look at the board. We've optimized the schedule. We have Farm System manufacturing our lifeguards. We have dog swimming, seniors doing aquafit, kids doing private lessons.
The spreadsheet looks amazing.
It does. But I'm looking at this perfectly optimized model, and it feels a bit elitist.
How do you mean?
Are we only serving the people who already know how to find us? The middle-class families who have the time, the transportation, and the disposable income to sign up for level 4 swimming or Masters tournaments.
That's a very fair critique.
What about that 79% of lower-income kids we talked about at the very beginning? They aren't going to accidentally stumble into an aquafit class.
No, they're not. And that is the crucial pivot here, moving into Section 5. It's where the strategy shifts to active community outreach. Play 5.
Because if you only serve the people who have the means to walk through your front doors, you will never, ever close the equity gaps we discussed at the top of the show.
Exactly. The infrastructure won't save lives if the most vulnerable people never touch the water.
Right. You literally have to go to them.
You do. The playbook talks about moving beyond the physical walls of the facility to partner with the institutions that already have access to these kids.
Like schools, foster care agencies, faith groups.
Yes. There's an amazing program in New Hanover County in North Carolina called Schools in Pools, specifically targeted at second graders.
I saw that. And New York City actually passed legislation requiring free swim lessons for second graders across the board.
Because they finally recognized that teaching a child to survive in the water wasn't just a recreational issue, it was a fundamental public health intervention.
And the logistics of those partnerships are brilliant. You partner with the public school district.
Right.
The school provides the captive audience of children and the bus transportation during school hours. And the aquatic facility provides the water and the certified instruction.
It's a total win-win.
This is shifting from a storefront model where we wait for customers to walk in to a delivery model for public health. You take the water safety directly to the populations who need it most.
That's a great analogy.
But, and it's a very big but, who is paying for this outreach? If we are heavily subsidizing lessons for thousands of second graders, where does the money actually come from?
Because we already established the city manager is broke?
Exactly.
The playbook addresses this elephant in the room head on, and the answer might surprise people.
Which is?
The money is out there. At the state level, you have massive initiatives like NY Swims in New York, which committed $200 million specifically for pools, heavily targeting underserved areas.
200 million is massive.
It is. But even beyond state infrastructure bills, you have federal and philanthropic money. You have the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA.
Wait, WIOA is federal money for job training, right?
Yeah.
How does that apply to a public pool?
Because, as we established earlier with the farm system, training lifeguards is workforce development.
Oh, wow.
You are taking untrained teenagers, giving them highly technical, certified medical and rescue training, and employing them. That qualifies for federal workforce grants.
That is so smart.
And you also have Community Development Block Grants, or CDBG.
Let's explain that one, because I think a lot of people hear block grants and their eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
Basically, that's federal money handed down to local governments, specifically meant to revitalize low to moderate income neighborhoods, correct?
Exactly. And if you have structured your pool not just as a place to splash around, but as a neighborhood anchor that provides child safety, adult wellness, and youth employment.
You perfectly fit the criteria for a neighborhood revitalization grant.
You do. Add to that organizations like the USA Swimming Foundation and the Step Into Swim program.
Which has already funded lessons for 285,000 kids nationally.
Right. The resources exist at every single level of government and philanthropy.
But, and I assume this is the catch, they don't just hand you a giant novelty check just because you happen to own a pool.
No, they certainly do not. And this raises an important question for any pool operator listening.
What's the question?
Can you prove your impact? Funders do not fund pools. They don't care about the concrete. They fund workforce development and drowning prevention.
Right.
They fund community equity. To access that money, you have to collect the hard data to tell that story.
You have to track your neighborhood demographics, your lesson completion rates, your specific transition numbers from junior lifeguard to paid employee.
Exactly. If you can prove with data that your facility is actually executing on all of those fronts, you become incredibly well positioned to access millions of dollars in funds that an empty, unprogrammed pool will never see.
Okay, this has been an incredibly reframing of how we view our cities.
It really is a paradigm shift.
The next time you, the listener, drive past your local municipal pool, you shouldn't just see a place to cool off in July.
No, you are looking at a highly targeted public health intervention.
You're looking at a youth employment engine and a community hub. The infrastructure is already there. The opportunity lies entirely in how it gets used.
It's all about moving from passive maintenance to active programming.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Okay.
If our local pools are sitting there operating at a fraction of their potential civic value, what other invisible public infrastructure is hiding in plain sight in our neighborhoods? What else have we already paid for with our taxes that is just waiting for the right playbook to unlock its true power?
That is a phenomenal question to end on. Thank you for exploring this with me.
Yes. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.
Hey, thanks for being here. Leave a comment if you like. Share if you can. We're going to be posting more content in the days and weeks to come. Do subscribe.